Hello, everybody, and welcome to Crushing Doubts live Q&A every Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. As always, these days, I'm trying to get my Instagram going, so give me a second and make sure that it's working. It looks like it is. I think there's just a delay there, actually, so I think it actually is working, but I need to check on that and make sure. In any case, it is great to be here with you all, everybody. I'm here, as always, to discuss mind-body issues. And what is that? First of all, let's talk about what it is. Then let me talk about why I call it what I call it. So, mind body issues are physical experiences that happen because of what goes on in our minds, either because of thinking or feeling. But it's very clear that very important that I say this clearly at the outset. It is not made up. These are not in your head. They're actually from your head, but then they're made very real in the body. So, how did I even discover this? Well, I had 8 years of chronic back pain, or seemingly chronic back pain, that I resolved very quickly, relatively quickly, once I discovered the right information. But I didn't have the right information at all, and I had no sense that I was going to get better. So, what happens when that happens? Well, when you have a symptom that's just not going away, and you're having no expectation that it is going to go away, your thought process is going to go down some very dark paths, and that is exactly what happened. So, you know, I didn't feel like I had anywhere to go. I was talking to doctors about uh, the various. Looks like I just got my Instagram going. All right, sorry about that, guys. Let me start over here. This is our Crushing Doubts live Q&A every Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and it is a pleasure to be here with you all. I'm discussing mind-body issues, which are, of course, how the mind can generate actual physical symptoms. So this is not made up. These are very real. I discovered this through 8 years of my own experience with seemingly chronic back pain, getting no answers, and resolved that with the right information. Now, I took all that right information and made it even better as far as I'm concerned, because I took all the lessons of what it took to get me better and what I observed in myself. And then I started observing it in other people and seeing how could I help people that way. Let me say hi to a couple people, then we'll get into talking about my system. Rita, it is good to see you here. Jeannie Culwin, good to see you here. And thanks both for saying hi. Really great to have two of the best coaches in the mind body community here with us. And guys, feel free to chime in with ideas if things I'm saying are echoing what you're saying, or if you have different ideas about it. I want to hear, because the whole idea is to have these discussions with everybody. And why do I think that's important? Well, I find that it's very hard to get better from these mind body symptoms if we don't know what is happening. I found it just maddening to have any lingering question that I really couldn't answer at all. It's okay if I couldn't get the best answer or I didn't have it fully answered, but if it made just no sense whatsoever, or if there were contradictions that made no sense to me, that was very hard. Even within the mind body community, there are these seeming contradictions that get mentioned. For example, sometimes people say, well, just look for the emotion, and the emotion is causing it. In my system, that's actually not always true. And this explains why some people will use journaling and they'll discover something emotional and it changes the symptoms. And other people, I call it beating their head against the emotional brick wall. They'll try to get the answers, but they're not getting anywhere. And why is that? Because something else is causing it. So let me talk a little bit about what causes symptoms and how my system can work for you. So my system is called the 3-column system. It gets the name from when I started working with people after I had gotten better. I would encourage people to take out a sheet of paper and divide it into 3 columns, because the columns can help you see the different kinds of mind-body experiences there are. And there's only 3 of them, thankfully. And these cover the whole range, which I find to be of great comfort. And I think as you guys ask questions tonight, hopefully you will see they really do cover all the ground in terms of explaining why does one thing happen at one moment and another thing happen at another. So what are the 3 columns? The emotions column is based on the idea that your feeling states, especially if you're not consciously aware of them, can lead to symptoms. But what I discovered is that they actually don't just lead to symptoms just haphazardly. What they really lead to is the onset of a symptom or the uptick of a symptom that was already there. And this is important because we can start to figure out, well, what's happening here? Why are we having symptoms at a given moment, right? So with the emotions column, the function of the symptom is to distract you from learning about whatever that unconscious emotion is. And that works very similarly to how Dr. Sarno described it. He was the medical doctor whose books got me out of this hell and sent me on a path of mind-body healing, not just for me, but for other people. That was the basis of some of his ideas, and it was very helpful, but it only covers certain ground. It covers the onset and upticks of symptoms, so more acute symptoms, and it relates to this function of distraction. But what I found is my thinking was also clearly driving things. I mean, I had 8 years of back pain, and it was basically the same every single day. Well, I wasn't having the same feeling every single day, so that didn't make sense to me. And I started paying attention to what was going on in my mind. Now that I understood that there was a link between the mind and the body, I decided, okay, let me study this. Let me figure out what's going on in my mind. And what I found is that thoughts all by themselves, if they go down the wrong pathway, can leave you stuck in a mind-body feedback loop where you're having the exact same symptoms because you're having the exact same mindset. If your mindset never changes, then it's going to tend to lead to you having the exact same physiological experience. And so lingering symptoms, those that seem chronic, that signals something that I call the doubt column. Doubt covers all thought that heads in negative direction where you're just not clear what's happening. There are 4 forms of doubt. There's fear, there is confusion, there's lack of certainty, and there are questions, just basic questions. And this is why we're here tonight, is to answer questions. When you bring those doubts down, you change what's going on in your mind, and that changes the setup of what can go on in your body so that some of those seemingly chronic symptoms can start to break up. The function of doubt column symptoms is to protect you. It's protection. Doubt is like a helicopter parent. It's afraid you're going to get into trouble, and it's like, be careful here, be careful here, be careful here. But it goes overboard so that we can barely live our lives. And we've got to dismantle the doubt so that we can be confident. I also got the tip of this from Sarno when he mentioned that you need to accept the diagnosis to get better. Well, he is right about that. But accepting the diagnosis is far more wide-ranging. First of all, you can accept it partially or fully, and you do ultimately need to accept it fully. But accepting it fully doesn't mean I accept that I have a mind-body issue. It also means accepting that it is benign, not going to harm me. It is also accepting it's reversible. I can actually change my thinking, and this will change what happens. That's part of accepting the diagnosis too. And what I found is accepting what's happening to us and knowing what's happening to us across the board is very key. And that's what the doubt column is for. The power column is something I discovered after I got better from the symptoms. And I started to feel really powerful because I knew this stuff cold, and no one else understood it. And I alone was able to stand against the symptoms. I didn't need anybody to support me. And that was a first for me. And it opened my eyes to what being powerful can be like. So as I started to look at it, I realized, oh, wow, power plays a big role in things. And in keeping looking at it, I noticed the doubt column is for those symptoms that are seemingly chronic. The emotions column is for those onsets and upticks. But the power column is something I discovered in other people. I discovered it in me after I got better. But I discovered it in other people when they would hit symptom plateaus. They had gotten their doubt down. They were pretty certain. They had understood their emotions. They could track those. They could use them well to get rid of symptoms. But they were hitting symptom plateaus. So when I started to look at that, I found that the power column has another function. It's a third function, and it is the function of communication. There is a part of you that wants to communicate a part of who you are that is outside of your awareness. It's kind of like the emotions column, but instead of being unaware of a certain moment or a certain feeling, you're actually unaware of you, the central you. And so the power column symptoms, they want to communicate to you. So we've got 3 columns, 3 different functions. You take away those functions, you take away the symptoms. And if you learn to recognize which is which, you're always going to have a great capability to address each issue as it comes up. We are moment-to-moment beings. These symptoms happen moment to moment. We need to know what to do in each moment, and these columns organize it. Okay, that's my spiel about my column system. I will get into some of the resources available on my website in a little bit, but I do want to get to questions in a second. I want to say hi to a couple other people. It is Layla has joined us here, and Catherine Toomer has joined us. Thanks for being here, guys. I see Dorisa says, hi, Dan and everyone. Dorisa, it's great to see you. You're a regular here. Lynn is as well. Lynn says hi to everybody. And Karen Isaacs, good to see you here as well. So I'm going to get into the questions in a second. But remember, one of the reasons that I do this is that I'm giving people what I wish I had had. And one of the things I wish I had had was just somebody to answer questions. I asked Eric Sherman, who was a therapist who trained under Sarno, like 200 questions in one sitting. And it was one of the most helpful things I ever did because I was getting real answers. Things were making sense. How are we supposed to get better if we feel like it doesn't make sense? We need to make sense of it. Okay, so let's get into questions because that's the whole thing. If I can answer your questions to your satisfaction, by the way, that means push me on it, ask follow-up questions. If I can get your questions answered to your satisfaction, you're getting more information and more confidence that you can get better. Okay, Lynn Slavensky says, Dan, in group, I think you mentioned that pain can come during the night. Could you clarify? Thank you. So let me start by saying this. Pain or any symptom can come at any moment. It doesn't matter whether, obviously, I don't think Lynn's asking literally, it only happens during daylight hours. I know she knows it can come at night, but what she's talking about is when you're asleep. And this is the thing. Your brain doesn't disappear when you go to sleep. There's a lot of brain activity. And these columns can follow you right into sleep. You're still having feelings when you're asleep. In fact, dreams are processing a lot of emotional material. They're also processing a lot of cognitive material, meaning thinking. So your doubts can follow you into sleep. If you go to sleep thinking I am a debilitated, incapacitated mess and I'm never going to get better, you're going to have bad dreams about that kind of, and I'm not criticizing anybody for having that. We can all have things like that. But that kind of thinking can follow you into your sleep, and your body is still experiencing it. So the reason we can have pain during the night, even when you're asleep, is because your brain is still functioning, and who you are goes right into those dreams. Same thing with the power column. Who you are at your core, if anything, you're even closer to that information when you're asleep because we're working on who we are. Whereas during the day, we're distracted, we're doing things. There's nowhere to go there. We're just thinking about it. So that's one point of clarification, Lynn. Let me say one other thing. Sometimes people ask me, well, if I have a symptom, how do I, in the middle of the night when I was asleep, how do I understand it? Well, first of all, one of the things that I say is if the symptom was an onset or an uptick, we go straight to the emotions column. This is one of the things that's helpful about the columns is they categorize how to understand a moment. If you had an onset or an uptick, then something emotional was going on. So that means you were either having some kind of dream with emotions in it or some kind of thought process in some other sleep sort of way where that emotion was there. Now, one thing I recommend to people when they are going to sleep, if they're having a lot of sleep time, mind body symptoms, is take 10 to 15 minutes before you go to sleep and think about the day and focus on the things that might have bothered you during the day, the things that could cause symptoms. And if you do that, you stand much more of a chance of sleeping well because you're processing things. If you had a big day of doubt also, I would process that and I would be actively fighting the doubt when you go to bed. Like sometimes people have doubts about whether they can sleep well. Well, insomnia is a symptom of its own. And you could say to yourself, this is something I call the positive maybe, where you say to yourself, well, but if I challenge doubt, this could go differently. I don't know how this is going to go, so let me see. I think it could go better if I just keep it in mind. What I find myself is that if I keep these columns in mind, they serve me well consciously, unconsciously, throughout the day, in all kinds of situations. And so ultimately, that's what I want to do is help people integrate this into their way of thinking. The columns are a system. They're kind of like a detection system for symptoms. They resolve symptoms. They're a way of discovering the self, but they're also a way of living. And I can talk more about that, but that's kind of the way that I think about it. Lynn, do let me know if that clarified what I meant about symptoms at night. Scotty Styles has joined us here. Great hello. Excellent emojis. Thank you so much. Another great coach in the mind body community. So we got some great ones in attendance. Please do let me know what you guys think. Okay. Karen Isaacs says, piping in from vacation in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. That sounds nice right about now. My husband's leg pain back. That does not sound nice right about now. Let me see. But meanwhile, he plays 4 hours of golf every day. Interestingly, no pain while he golfs. Telltale signs of mind body issues, they come and they go. Now, let me say one thing about that, though. Sometimes when I say that, people whose symptoms aren't coming and going are like, oh no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying all mind body symptoms come and go. I'm saying that is one of the telltale signs that it is mind body that you can go right into attacking. There are also symptoms that do not come and go that also have telltale signs. For instance, 8 years of back pain for no particular reason. There was no onset that made any sense, but it was just there. Another telltale sign is when you recognize doubt and it goes away. That's a telltale sign. There's lots of them. Now, back to Karen. She said, I have a hard time not speaking about it. And I understand what you mean, Karen, because you have this information, right? You have very good information about this. You've known it for decades, long before you met me. And it can get frustrating not only when your husband doesn't listen to you about it, but it's hard when we have this information and people aren't taking it, because it's like working with somebody who won't take their medication, or you know they say like, oh, let's say they're eating fast food all the time and they're really not feeling well, and you're like, hey, you could eat it. That's a healthy meal. It might feel really good to you. And they're like, no, it's not that. And they just sweep it aside. It can be very, very frustrating. And Karen, one of the things that we will need to keep strategizing about is, how do we keep you feeling powerful in those moments? What's the powerful move for you? What do you need to say to yourself, or maybe to your husband, to get him to a place, or you to a place where you feel better about this? Sometimes I feel I do this with my wife, actually, because she sometimes doesn't believe me either. And I will sometimes say to her, listen, you don't have to listen to me, but I have information. So if you want it, it's here. And then if she keeps complaining about it, I'll say, listen, I'm totally empathic to you, but how do you expect me to listen to you when I actually have an answer and you won't listen? And that actually has opened her up to really listening. So Karen, I'd have to get to know your husband and his way of doing things to help you know more about that. And I do know some about it, of course, because we've talked about it. But ultimately, I want to find solutions for you. We need solutions in the moment that make you feel better. Now, you did say a second part of this. Seeing my hubs in pain scares me. I know it's TMS, but I want to know this 100%. Okay. Now, this is an important observation that we can make that's going to help you. What you're noting here is that it's not just that he's having pain and that he's not believing you. It's actually also that him having pain spikes your own doubt. This is very common, by the way. I found it to be a challenge, that when I was getting better and I had to manage my own doubt, when other people would say doubt triggering things, or other people would have pain, it would get me to doubt. And Karen, I know what you're saying. You say, I know it's TMS, which is what Sarno called mind body symptoms, essentially. Tension myositis syndrome was what he called it. But I want to know this 100%. That's exactly right. I get you. But the fact that you're stating this goal is really important, because I can sometimes be helpful. I can be helpful to people in lots of different ways, but one of the ways that I can sometimes be helpful is I am very certain about this. In fact, I'm more certain about this than anyone that I've encountered in the mind body community. Someone once said to me, you're more certain than anybody but Sarno. And I thought to myself, that's basically true. And part of the reason is I understand how important certainty is. And so I study it in a way that gets me so convinced from every angle that I can be certain. So what we have to do, Karen, is figure out what's making you not certain there. I'll give you an example. I'm not saying this is it, but it could be that you're used to not holding your own ground and your own reality as firmly as you need to. And so when somebody that you respect is having something, it just makes you think, can I really be right? And they're not really 100%. And I think doubt comes in with any percentage. Could be that it's only 1%, but it can still climb in there. We've got to get you to a place where you realize you actually know better than the vast majority of every single person on earth, because you have been educated in this by Sarno and Nicole Sachs and me and yourself as you went after this. We got to get you to a point where you feel powerfully, like you are a guru of this. Your husband, I don't mean any offense to him, but he's way off the grid. Although he's actually ahead of most other people because he lives with you. But you got to prize your own value and your own wisdom. And I know it can sound tricky, but this is part of what the power column is for. The power column can help bring down doubt because you get to challenge yourself to let yourself be this incredibly powerful person who just actually does know this better than everybody else. So this is a little plug again, Karen, to get back to that and remind you, listen, almost all pain is mind body. And when you remind yourself, well, he played golf for 4 hours, that actually should help you bring down the doubt and say, he's just having an issue. Now, you might need to decide, I can't take this in too much. I don't want to know about it because it gets my doubt going. My wife recently, she said to me, I was having some kind of mind body symptom in my heel and I was limping around just a bit. I figured it out. It went away in a couple minutes. But she said, like, oh, you're having a mind body symptom. But she said something about like you're wobbly. And I was like, don't say that word to me. That word feeds my doubt. Now, I'm not saying it fed my doubt, meaning it succeeded and it got me totally off, into doubt. But what I was just noting is I don't like when there's a doubt triggering experience. Stop it. Don't do that. In fact, as a society, I think we have to get much better at not triggering each other's doubt, and not just about symptoms, but about anything. We're making each other doubt all over the place. So, Karen, let's see where that lands for you. We'll do follow-up. That's part of what this Q&A is for. My answers to your questions are to the best of my ability at that moment, but I can often get more information. Now, with that in mind, I'm going to put in a little plug for something that can help a lot of people, which is my group memberships. On my website, www.crushingdoubt.org, you can get there's actually multiple resources, but the two main resources you can get until my book is out. One is the seminar. The seminar is 8 sessions. It's 12 hours in total, so they're 75 minutes long each. And it maps out all of mind-body experience. Why does one person say this in the mind-body field and another person say this? Because we need one definitive answer that makes sense of it all. If you're going to get to 100% clarity and doubt being lower, you need to know all of these things. And I don't mean that in an overwhelming way. You don't have to study it till the end of time. But you do have to iron out the major questions that are lingering and bothering you. And if you can do that, you're going to get to a place where you feel like, okay, I really got this. So the seminars, they help to do that. Then they map out the columns in pretty great detail. And included in that is, what do you do in the columns? The columns are a way that you recognize what's happening for you. You get information, but they also have tasks within them, things that you're going to do that are going to help you. So those seminars can be really helpful. They're pre-recorded, so you can get them in the middle of the night. You wake up in the middle of the night and you're feeling like, I gotta do something about this. You can start watching them right away. I highly recommend them. After the seminar, though, what I found when I first did the seminar is, you know what? Most people need some help implementing the system. And that is really what the groups are for. The groups are somewhat similar to this in that they are Q&A based. There are people just bringing questions and I'm answering them. But one of the reasons that they're so different is we can get so far so fast because we're having a back and forth. Like if I was talking to Karen in the group as opposed to now, she would have had all kinds of questions for me and I would have had all kinds of questions for her. And we would have gotten much more specific information about what was bothering her about the situation instead of me answering things that relate and are useful, but might not totally hit the mark as much. So these are Zoom calls. They're not recorded. So, you don't have to worry about confidentiality and that sort of thing. And you get your answers. The groups, by the way, the group also is just a fantastic group of people. They're very supportive of each other. They're even supportive of me. And I'm, of course, supportive of them. But we get further information during that time. And it's not just when I'm talking to them specifically about their specific questions. It's when I'm talking about any question, because the columns are describing what's happening. That's their job. And we get a lot of information in that. So if you want to get more information about that and want to talk to me about it, you can email me, dan@crushingdoubt.org, or you can order it on my website, www.crushingdoubt.org. Okay. Lynn Slavensky had a response. Yes, great clarification. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Lynn. I'm glad that was clarifying. Just remember, if you need more clarification, ask. There literally are no stupid questions. I never understood why there ever would be in any format, but there definitely are not here. In fact, your questions are so important because otherwise they swim around in your head and you don't get anywhere with them. You need a place you can go to for answers that you can trust. Hopefully, I can be that for you. Majida03, thank you for joining us here. Please do let me know if you have any questions. When people come in the middle, don't be afraid to say, like, what are we talking about here? What is this? We're talking about mind-body issues, how we can get relief from symptoms that medical doctors and typical ways of dealing with symptoms are not resolving. And I have a system for doing that, my column system. Happy to talk more about it. Okay. Koalas for Alls. I like your name. Inflammation. Seems like there is confusion as to whether this is TMS or not. Okay, so again, remember, TMS is tension myositis syndrome. That's what Sarno called mind-body symptoms. Let me first address that. There's many terms you're going to hear for mind-body symptoms. TMS, some people call it PPD, some people call it mind-body disorder. I stay away from disorder and syndrome altogether because actually, if you think about it, we have mind-body experience every day. When we get embarrassed, blood flow rushes to our face. That is, blushing is a mind-body symptom. Crying. I remember when I'm writing a part of my book. Now I'm just in the editing phase, thankfully. But when I was writing and it suddenly dawned on me, oh my God, crying is a mind-body experience. You feel sad and it changes your actual tear ducts and actual tears roll down your face. Your body is going through changes because of this. So the question Koalas for Alls has is, what about inflammation? There are many symptoms that are primarily mind-body in relation. But what I will say is that most symptoms can come from multiple pathways. Think about like an upset stomach. An upset stomach could come from if you ate something that's like really past its date. Your stomach might feel bad for that reason. I do want to say, just so I don't inspire much doubt here, much more of the time, almost all food poisoning is actually mind-body. People blame it on the food poisoning all the time. So I don't want to go too far down that path where people think, uh-oh, that happens a lot. That actually doesn't happen a lot. But you can have an upset stomach for that reason, or because you have an illness. You also can have it for mind-body reasons. Same is true with a headache. You can have a headache if you ram your head into a brick wall, but you also can have a headache because you just had some relatives over and they're a headache. Or because you didn't sleep a lot. There's all kinds of different reasons. Inflammation is actually the same thing in a way, in that you can have inflammation because, let's say, you sprained your ankle, and then boom, there's inflammation there. It swells up. You also, though, can have inflammation purely for mind-body reasons, and then, to make matters even more complicated at first, though we will simplify this soon, you can also have inflammation from a physical event that caused inflammation that then gets doubt tacked on top of it. And you start to worry about it and it inflames it even more. I have a friend from my basketball league, and he has been out for 4 months with a mysterious injury to his knee. And it's been swollen the whole time. Actual inflammation. Well, this is a telltale sign of the kind of inflammation that is mind-body versus what isn't. I worked with a good physical therapist once, and one of the things that he said is that the inflammation process lasts about 7 to 10 days generally. Once you're past that, it's mind-body. You can break a bone and you're going to have inflammation, but once it's past that initial period, inflammation actually goes down. So that's one part of the answer, koalas, about, well, when is the inflammation mind-body and when is it maybe not? Now, when I say maybe not on purpose, because even in that 7 to 10 day period, in my experience, the vast majority is mind-body as well. 99.9999% of everything you feel is going to be mind-body in nature. Your brain is very active, your body's very active, and they are very active together. That's my first answer, but now I want to follow up, okay? Let me know what you think about that answer, koalas. We'll see if we got you the information you needed. If not, just keep asking, okay? I understand, and we've got to get you information about this. Most inflammation, though, is mind-body. Now, When you say it seems like there's confusion, I think you're talking about the experts in the field, or maybe how doctors talk about it versus mind body people. I'd want to hear more about that. But, here's the thing. I want you guys to trust me, but I also have to earn your trust. So that's going to happen in a discussion where you can ask me, why this, why that? And if my answers make more sense, I'm going to earn your trust more. Hopefully I've done that some with this first answer, but let's keep going. Okay, Koalas then was saying to Karen about, I think, husbands or significant others who won't listen, or anybody who won't listen. Karen, very frustrating. Totally agree with you. But again, Karen, I want to encourage you. We can find ways to get you what you need to feel peace within yourself, or even in the interaction with him. Susie Karen's good to see you on Instagram. Thanks for joining us here. Okay, Dorisa said, trying to combat a medication thought. Doctor upped my dosage for an issue which I feel is creating another issue. So I decided to go back to a lower dose, which then I feel increases the ache in my body. Dorisa then said, great, I'm glad someone asked about inflammation. That is my main issue. So Dorisa, I want you also to weigh in on whether I answered that question to your satisfaction. But now let me get back to the question about medication that you raised, or at least the thought. And I love the way you said this. You said trying to combat a medication thought. There's an awareness that you have there about doubt, which I'm not surprised about because we've talked about it. You're aware that any change, and this is true for anybody, any change to anything could inspire doubt. I'm not saying it will, but if we change something, doubt has an opportunity. In fact, doubt has an opportunity if we don't change something. When I was getting better from a mind, body, foot problem, when I would do the exercises to help me, sometimes that would bring down doubt, and then other times it would raise it up. So I have a rule of thumb about this. Do the thing that brings down your doubt in that moment. And Dorisa, I think that's part of what you're struggling here, is not feeling totally clear about that, because upping the dosage would create one issue. Lowering the dosage feels like it creates another issue. What I want to do is get in there and start to find out, well, what are you doubting here? What are you thinking is happening? So that we can challenge that thinking. Because I once was weaning off of a medication, and I had lots of symptoms, and the doctor kept telling me there really shouldn't be these symptoms. But then I would go on the internet and hear horror stories. I do not recommend going to Dr. Google. In fact, we should need to take away the degree. There's a lot of bad information out there, and it tends to be very fear-based. But what we need to do is to help you feel that you can get this under control and ultimately get past whatever you need to. I was able to get off of that medication, which I'm not saying you should get off of all medication, but if you wanted to, you probably can. If you want to take it and feel better about it and not have these side effects, I think you can do that too. If you want to lower the dose and not have the side effects, I think you can do that. If you want to raise the dose and not have the side effects, I think you can do that, because it's all about what happens in our minds. I often say it does not matter. It doesn't matter what we do as much as what we're thinking while we do it. So, Dorisa, I would want to find out more. And this is something, if we were in group together, this is a thing where I would ask you, okay, wait, what are you thinking during that time? And we'd be able to get even further in that conversation. But for now, since we're in this Q&A setup, I want you to follow up as needed, if you'd like to tell me about what doubts do you think are coming up. And here's the thing. In the doubt column, there are 3 things that we do, 3 tasks: observe, articulate, and counter. To observe a doubt, which is the first step, is to call it into question. And I want to know, how much do you believe the medication is causing these issues versus how much do you believe it's possible, at least, even just possible, that it's all mind body or partially mind body? We have to assess that, because that's what you're thinking, and that's going to play a role. So let's find out more about it. And in fact, you just said weather also is playing a role. You said my inflammation is in my few fingers and ache. And then you said weather also is playing a role. So Dorisa, I'm saying this to be supportive. None of this is critical towards Dorisa or anyone else. But I want to encourage you. Doubt is so crafty. I can hear doubt in what you're saying. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have doubt. I'm saying we should work to get you to a more certain place about whatever it's going to be. I want you to come down in a place where you can feel consistent and confident in what it is that you believe, because that's going to keep doubt from running wild. Let's follow up as needed, Teresa. Okay, but I do think that you can use doubt, the doubt column thinking, to get further in managing those symptoms and being able to take the medication in the dose that you want to. Okay. Okay, Rizzy Rasta Biggie Papa has joined us. Name rolls off the tongue. Thanks for joining us. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, Catherine Toomer, good to see you here. Catherine says, "Hi, Dr. Dan. I was triggered last night in a way that challenged my self esteem. I am working on it. Meanwhile, I'm having symptoms of a urinary tract infection. I'll know soon enough if it is real infection or mind body, but I am afraid that my fear of a UTI will lead me to actually becoming one. The fear is that I am falling back into a pattern of chronic UTIs, which I used to have, is my anxiety." Okay, I'm going to answer this in multiple ways. And as always, when I answer a question here, it is not just for the person that I'm answering for. It's also to try to flow it straight into the column system and how you can understand things. So one of the things that I want to make clear, and this it feels somewhat related to the inflammation question that Koala's asked. Sometimes there seems to be confusion also about, can mind body issues lead to actual infections or not? Well, just like any symptom, infections can come from multiple sources. They can come from a cut that got infected, or they can come from a mind body issue that actually does cause an infection. Now, when I say that, Catherine, I'm not saying that to make you worry. Actually, if we bring down your doubt, you're not going to worry about this that much anyway. Even if it did spike things in your body where it did cause a real infection, you could get it treated that one time. But are you going to get a repeated pattern of chronic UTIs? That reeks of doubt. Doubt has climbed in the door and said, "Catherine, remember this problem?" Guess what? It's coming back. Here's the thing. Doubt never gives up. It's always going to try to climb back in. And you need to tell it, nope, things are different now. I'm a different person than I was then. I'm on to what doubt is. So that means nothing's going to get chronic here. None of it. We'll be able to manage it, even just with my help. You can come here and ask questions about it. I'll have the answers. You can come to group if you need to, and we can crank it out. But what I want to encourage you is, what this is likely about is you are expanding into power, and doubt attacks when you're expanding into power. This is a theme we've been talking about for a while, Catherine. This is what happens when people are doing a lot of work in the power column. Doubt will try to attack. That's all that's happening here. Nothing bad is happening. You're not headed towards bad things. I just think you're expanding into power, and doubt has found a way to make you worry. Now, I want you to let me know if that makes sense to you, because, of course, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to me, except for me, because I carry my mind around with me. You guys have your minds. It has to make sense to you. Dee Brill, thank you for joining us here on Instagram. Please do let me know if you have any questions, including, what are we talking about? Because you're coming in the middle. Happy to talk to you about it. We're talking about mind-body issues in my system, of how to get relief from them, and, well, to understand what's happening from them, and by understanding, get relief. Okay, a follow-up from Koalas. Seems like in the mind-body community, inflammation brings up confusion. It does. I fully acknowledge that. You say, "I do appreciate your answer." Follow-up. Specifically speaking about arthritis in the knees, doctor says it is normal for pain to come and go. Okay, so first of all, the scientific literature actually shows that arthritis does not have a strong correlation to pain at all, if any. Now, that's news to a lot of people, but I've got the studies. I can, if you want, you can email me, dan@crushingdoubt.org. I can send you those studies. I'm actually working on getting a list of them up on my website. It's going to take a little while, but I'll get them up there, so that there are some basic studies that you can see. But if you wanted to go to the PPDA, which is the Psychophysiologic Disorders Association, and I'm on their board, it's a great organization. They focus on the science and the research, and they have a great bibliography of all this stuff. You can go there and find out arthritis not correlated to pain. So there's a huge amount of confusion with medicine. There's confusion with the mind-body community. But I think it's really important that I do acknowledge that even in the mind-body community, and this is a community I love and respect and does a great job, they do get confused about certain things. One thing that I can be helpful about is that I know how important it is to not be confused. And I don't mean I'm just going to will myself to not be confused. I mean, I've looked into every single one of these things and thought, what is my stance on this and why? And it has to be really solid, because I can't be certain with junk information. It's got to be really good. So what I would say, Koalas, and hopefully this is helpful, is even in the mind-body community, they have a lot of doubt. Every human being has a lot of doubt. I do too. The difference between me and everybody else, though, is I know never to take my eye off it. So I might have doubts, but I'm never going to buy into it. Even if I did for brief moments, I stop myself. I have a setup with my mom who I taught about these things. She knows that every once in a while I'm going to come to her and be like, tell me back what I would say, because sometimes I need to hear it from somebody else. She tells me back exactly what I would say, and I'm like, yep, that's right. It's doubt. And I get right back to it. So that inflammation stuff is actually the doubt in the mind-body community. My answer is accurate, what I said. But it's really whether it makes sense to you. Okay? Thank you so much. Oh, wait, hold on. You said about arthritis. I want to make sure I addressed your question. Specifically speaking about arthritis in the knee. So we have to start with the fact that arthritis doesn't actually have that correlation. If the doctors say it's normal for pain to come and go, I actually think that is a kind of catch-all where doctors are just saying something to try to answer the question. It is normal for pain to come and go, but not for the reasons they say. It's normal for pain to come and go because your mind is shifting a lot. If you use the columns, you're going to learn how it shifts and why it shifts that way. And what that's going to do is it's going to make sense of things. So I'd love to work with you on that. If you want to touch base with me, it's dan@crushingdoubt.org, or check out my website, www.crushingdoubt.org, or keep coming here and we'll have discussions. I just want to get everybody answers. Okay. DD Brill has a question on Instagram that's kind of a follow-up to that. What about the loss of cartilage in the knee? Doesn't that contribute to pain? Fantastic question. Actually, the research suggests it is not true. They did studies of people with bone-on-bone situations, and the pain was extremely variable. People have pain with full cartilage in the knees, and they don't have pain when, and I'm not saying every single one. I'm just saying there's no correlation. There's a lot of people who have no cartilage in their knee, but no pain. If even one person has that, we'd have to wonder. Now, here's the thing, DD Brill. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to me. It matters if that settles it for you. And listen, we're just at the beginning of these conversations together. I want you to keep pushing on it. Ask what you need to ask. I said something. I don't expect you to just buy it. I want you to think about it and ask me questions about it so we can get you to a place where you believe it. But the good news is, at least as a starting point, is that if you're thinking that's the source of your pain, I would bet a lot that it's actually mind-body. And if I can show you how and why, that will help you. Okay? All right. Catherine Toomer says, thank you, Dr. Dan. It makes total sense. I have been feeling myself falling down the rabbit hole of doubt. Yep. Knowing I don't want to go there. You are right. Anyone, again, you're saying it has suddenly allowed me to turn around and climb back out of the rabbit hole of doubt. Thank you. You're welcome, Catherine. Listen, this is part of why what I do works, and it's that simple, is to recognize these ideas. It disables what's happening. Okay, now you're not sinking into doubt, just from that simple little word, an idea. So I'm glad that helped. Rudemaster27, good to see you here. Thanks for the wave. Adam Coloretti, thanks for coming. Good to see you here as well. It is Layla has a question. If you have time, can you briefly touch on how adrenal fatigue symptoms can be mind-body? Okay, so there are certain mind-body symptoms that come from the fact that our central nervous system gets revved up and up and up. And that can happen with any symptoms that just seem like they're not going away, especially if we have a history of trauma or we tend to be very anxious. What happens is the central nervous system is really revved up. If you think about it, it's like if somebody decided, I'm going to stay up for 4 straight days. You're going to get tired. So those symptoms are happening because your body's systems are getting very taxed by the continuation of a sense of danger. Now, the great news about this is that if we bring down the sense of danger effectively, that will all calm down. How do we do that? You can't just tell yourself you're safe. If you don't believe it, it won't matter. But if you do believe it, it does matter. And that is what the columns are for. Well, they're for multiple things, but one of the things they're for is to give you a sense that this actually can make sense, that I actually am going to be safe. This is going to be better. And I think one of the reasons that people do tend to listen to me more is I've been there. I had it happen myself on multiple occasions. So once we get you believing it, all of that central nervous system function will start to calm down. Why? Because you start to feel, I actually am safer than I thought. And then it'll get better and better. And we're doing it, Layla. We're getting there. This is going to happen. And all those fasciculations, which come from that in part, it's all going to calm down. Okay, so let's talk about it. Okay, Dee Brill's follow-up. I tend to agree. Just wonder why so many people get knee replacements. It's like every other person 50 and older is doing that. That's completely correct. And I understand why you're wondering it. Most of those knee replacements are not necessary at all. Completely unnecessary. Doctors, though, don't know what they're doing. They don't even know what they're seeing and why. So they're just kind of, it's like if you took what's a good analogy? It's like if you had a stain on your shirt and you brought it to an auto mechanic. They'd be like, well, let me look under the hood. Where is the hood? I can't even find it. It gets that messed up. And they're that off track about that. Doctors are fantastic with, life-threatening stuff. We got to go to doctors. I encourage people, get annual checkups. Don't even do mind-body treatment unless you've had some doctor at least say, I don't know what this is. When I hear a doctor say, I don't know what this is, I'm like, hallelujah, here we are. This is a mind-body issue. But a lot of times they'll say they do know, but they're actually giving a bad diagnosis. There are some people who need knee, hip replacements, shoulder replacements. That usually is about when there is such structural damage. Like my mom actually had to have a hip replacement, but the socket of her bone had completely disintegrated. It just wasn't even there structurally. Now, that still wasn't the cause of most of the pain, but it was making it so that she couldn't move the joint. That's when you need a replacement. And what percentage would I say is the case with the people who actually do get that? It's low. It's got to be maybe 5% at most. And I'm not poo-pooing anyone who does it. I totally understand. But people are being misdiagnosed because they're not factoring in this key factor. So Dee Brill, let's see what that does for you. You asked about columns. So the columns are my system of how to understand the three main causes of mind-body issues and how to address them. Simply put, it's the emotions, doubt, and power columns. They each identify different types of symptoms, what their function is, and what to do. I could say more about it, but actually one thing you could do is go back and watch the beginning of this video, or really any of these videos, because I describe it at the beginning. You also can email me with questions about it, dan@crushingdoubt.org, or keep coming here, and we'll talk about it, okay? It is Layla says, thank you. It is my pleasure. AMM Sunday has joined us. Good to see you here. And now I got to jump over to YouTube. Jane Smith. Hi, Dr. Dan and Teresa and everyone. Couldn't get a signal in the car. Okay, sounds like you are home. Now, I couldn't make sense of my downswing despite trying. So now I'm afraid that I can be struck down like that anytime and feel such a drastic hit to my confidence. Okay, so the main thing that can help you against this, Jane, is there's two parts to it, but there's really a main thrust. The main thrust is you make sense and your symptoms make sense. That is the one. I only ask one assumption. I don't like assumptions because they don't, they're not things that usually we can rely on, but this is an assumption that things make sense. That's all I'm asking. So if you make that assumption, then we could say this, even though your doubt has convinced you that you're not going to be able to figure this out, and you're going to be vulnerable to this. Does that mean we need to buy into it? Not if we think there's an answer. So that's part one. Part two is where I come in. Doubt does not do well against me because doubt is full of shit. It is wrong every time. And when we start to look at it, its arguments crumble. So you need to hold on to the idea that things can make sense, that I can help you make sense of it, and doubt's going to come crumbling down when we look at it. Here's another thing. When you master this again, you'll be even stronger against doubt. Doubt tries to attack us and make us think, oh, well, this time you can't get it, right? But if we get through that second time and that third time and that fourth time, I've conquered doubt so many times that it can't bother me anymore. And so we're going to get there, Jane. Let me know if that helped you, okay? Obviously, that is the goal. Okay, Teresa then said, oh, by the way, if I ever skip anybody's question, I never mean to do that. It's definitely not on purpose, but I don't like people to feel dismissed. It's a terrible feeling. So please do bump the question up if I missed it somehow, or send it to me in an email, okay? Teresa then said, that is what had been happening for me. Doubt is climbing back in. Yep. My problem is rheumatoid arthritis because I do have swelling. I completely believe that my osteoarthritis does not hurt. Okay. So the rheumatoid arthritis, though, at the very least, I can say that swelling from rheumatoid arthritis can be exacerbated by mind body symptoms. So I want to start exploring just how far can we push this? And I want you to have some optimism. We can push it really, really far. A lot of, in fact, there's a book called Anatomy of an Illness by Norman Cousins. Many people think that he had rheumatoid arthritis as the main autoimmune issue that he solved. I think he solved it pretty much entirely, but obviously this is anecdotal. But just by watching funny movies, he just stopped he took lots of vitamin C. His doctor was on board with it. He watched lots of funny movies and he got better. But I think some of that was because he was believing it. And Teresa, I think we could take some steps forward in belief. I think that's what we need to do. Okay. Now, Teresa said, that is the kind of hip surgery I had. Half the ball of the socket was gone. So, yeah, when things like that happen, you can't magically make the ball of the socket reappear. If there's something that structurally damaged, that matters. However, this gets warped. A lot of people will say, well, you've got a muscle tear there. Guess what? A muscle tear is a word that actually is synonymous with a strain most of the time. There can be full tears, and those sometimes need to actually be repaired because the tissue is not even connected. If the tissue is not connected, it can't heal. But most tears, I'll put in quotes, are actually just strains that would just go away, and they actually are largely mind-body in the symptomatology of them. So this is interesting, and we need clarity about this, so I'll keep it coming. Okay, Teresa says, thank you. You're most welcome. Let's keep talking about it, okay? You're doing great. Keep it up. Okay, Dee Brill says, okay, thanks. I'll rewatch on YouTube. Yeah, and please do let me know if you have questions. You also can just come back here next week. I will be here next week. 2 weeks from today, I'm actually away. It's my kids' spring break, so I will miss you in 2 weeks. But I will be here next week, same time, and just keep the questions coming. Let's finish up on this. Rudemaster27 says, I'm having the same problem with my hip. They told me mine is so bad, it's almost like fused together. Oh, okay. I have some good information about this. So going to have it done on July the 10th, but that fear causes other symptoms, pain in other areas. My body tenses up when I think about the surgery, but I've had second and third opinions. They all tell me the same thing. My hip is bad. Okay. So many things we could say, Rootmaster, but one thing I would say is you and I might want to talk more about this because there are very specific indicators of when these things are necessary. And I rely on the mind-body doctors in the mind-body field to help me discern this. Howard Schubiner, John Strax, David Schechter. There's some great medical doctors, Dave Clark, who can help me rule out certain things. And, you can get second and third opinions, but if they're all opinions of people who don't know anything about mind-body issues, you might be missing that. And I don't mean that critically of you. I mean it critically of them. So I don't know what is in there, but in terms of information and how we think about this. But when you say it's so bad, it's almost like it's fused together. Well, this is actually ringing bells of mind-body because when you have mind-body inflexibility, it's more inflexible than anything. It's like you're trying to bend iron. You cannot do it. But if you start to think about it this way, we could break through that. So you might not need that surgery. I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't want to tell you that definitively. But I think if we had some discussions about it and maybe got a consultation with a mind-body doctor, we could find out. I will say that the way you're describing your symptoms sounds like a mind-body issue. And the fact that you're getting these opinions from doctors doesn't necessarily mean that much to me. Not that I'm the one who matters, but just in terms of recommendations. Because I don't know if these doctors know about the mind-body issue. And if they don't, they could be saying all kinds of crazy things. So you actually might be in that group. In fact, I think probably you are, but we need to talk about it where we could avert that. Now, as for if you did go through with the surgery, you're going to be fine anyway. I'm not telling people don't do the surgery. You're going to have issues because even if you did have symptoms coming from the surgery or coming from the fear of the surgery, my columns can help you manage how to deal with that, right? This is doubt coming in. Let's keep talking about it. I hope this is helpful what I said. But if it's not, let me know how, why it's not or what goes on, because my goal is to help and I want to hear what goes on for you. Okay. Teresa said, I had relief from hip surgery right away. In the ones that are purely structural, it usually is relieving because they're addressing the issue. But many times we hear about these surgeries that don't work. Well, what's that a sign of? It's a sign that they're not treating the right thing. So many people, it's not necessarily the worst thing, but it's not fun and it's also costly. And you go through a surgery and then it doesn't clear it up. Well, if that happens, that's a sign of mind body also. It means didn't address the issue. Okay. I hope that's helpful, not only to you, Rudy, and I see you said thank you, but to everybody as we're talking about it. I'm here and we can keep talking about it. We've got time because it's in July, so we can talk about it. Okay, we'll finish up on this. Jane Smith says, thanks, Dr. Dan. I racked my brain to make sense of it. Maybe I was not going about it the right way. What should my first step be? There's lots of things I'm unhappy about, but I couldn't correlate one. Okay, your first step, Jane, is actually to bring down doubt. You were looking at the emotions column, but you were having lots of doubt. When doubt is in the picture, you must bring doubt down first, because doubt will ruin any search and it will make anything you find feel like it's nothing. That's your first step. So a little reminder, when doubt is there, start with doubt. Okay. Now, once you do that and you bring it down at all, then I would ask you, have you built out your emotions column themes? The emotions column themes are basically an emotional menu that asks yourself the question, what are the things that bother me? And why do they bother me? And when you have that menu set, you'll have a better way of figuring out what it was. Here's another thing is you can always come to me about it. You can either bring it here, even better in group, because I can get further with it and ask lots of questions. There are many times in group where somebody will say, I'm not sure what it was. And we start talking. And because I'm not only on the outside of it, but also have these instincts and experiences about it, I can actually make sense of it. So I know you've kind of gone back and forth about whether to come to groups or not. And I'm not trying to convince you to do it, but I will say that one of the advantages is you can come there. I probably could find out what it is by looking at the timing and all the clues. I'm a detective in this way. I'm a mind-body detective. I can find it for you if you'd like. So those are the answers. Bring down doubt first, organize that emotions column, see if you can get those answers, and then rely on me. If you can't, I can help you find it. Okay, guys, we do have to stop for today. We went extra long because there were lots of questions, but I'm glad we got to all of them. It's my pleasure to answer them. I know how important it is. You guys have lots of questions. They need to be answered. You can keep pushing me to get you those answers to your full satisfaction. Okay, that's what I'm here for. I will be here same time next week. That's Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I'll be away in 2 weeks, but here next week and the one after that, and we'll keep right on rolling and getting answers. Come to my groups if you want to talk to me directly. If you want to get a good sense of why there's all this confusion in the mind-body community, let's say about inflammation or something else, then the seminars are great for that. Rudy asked, is book almost done? Yep, I'm doing that last copy edit. I'm actually signing on with a publisher soon. So we're getting the book cover done and the design and everything. It's going to be out in a couple months. I will keep you posted. I'm sorry that it's taking so long, but I've been doing a lot while doing it. So that's part of the reason. And it has to be thorough. It's got to have the right answers. Okay. Jane says, thanks again, Dr. D. It is my pleasure. Guys, let's keep it up. Keep your questions coming. I'll keep the answers coming. Okay. Keep up the good work. I'm here with you all, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Okay. Take care.